So we're going to jump again into yet another Transformer Slag podcast Patreon listener question. Once again, if you want to be part of the Transformer Slag podcast Patreon, help support the podcast. Let us know we're doing a half-decent job here in the crazy Transformer world, keeping you educated and informed on what's going on in this amazing hobby. Again, patreon.com/Protoman. Or check the pinned comment or the description below. So what does it get you if you join the Patreon? Gets your name in the end credits scroll at the end of every segment moving forward, access to our awesome Discord, which, like I say every time, is a great place to talk about Transformers, go deep into the lore, share downloads, share links, and of course, more importantly than anything else, share sales links. Save some money in our hobby. It's the most important thing in these crazy pricing. Depending on what tier, you might get a little something in the mail on the higher tiers, or, like we have today, maybe be able to ask the Patreon listener question here on the pod. And, well, we got one here today from Mirage101, and Mirage101 wants to know, hey, Proto, I've learned a lot from the podcast when it comes to the production of figures and how Hasbro always tries to get the most out of the use of the molds that they make. And I started to wonder, how does the Studio Series line get away with so many one-off molds that never have seen repaints? There are so many Studio Series figures that have only seen one use. The Wreckers, BB Optimus, Shatter, Jet Shatter, Movie Brawn, and so on and so forth. Just to name a few. Interested to hear what you have to say about that. Thanks for everything, Mirage101. Well, thank you, Mirage101, for all the love and support on the pod. Man, like when it comes to Studio Series stuff, specifically Studio Series stuff aimed at the Bayverse, there's a whole bubble that's going on with that. But before we get into that, I'll just kind of lay a foundation on what I said before about, how Hasbro doesn't like to waste a mold, which is because Hasbro learned their lesson many years ago, and you don't see really today in the modern era that they waste a mold. And I always say that Hasbro won't waste a mold. Hasbro won't waste a mold. They learned that lesson because they were so lucky that, back in the day, when they started Transformers in 1984, here's a spoiler for everybody. All the 84, 85 product were pre-existing product that existed. Even like the weird stuff, like Shockwave and everything. They were all just pre-existing molds. All of G1 in those early years were repaints and retools. People hate repaints and retools, but I mean, let's be real. All of G1 was repaints and retools from pre-existing stuff. And they were lucky because back then they didn't have to suffer the cost of tooling and engineering and all that kind of stuff, because all they had to really worry about was packaging the product and giving it some, fanciness. And when you look at it after 85, then it's like, oh, now Hasbro, has to really start making their own stuff with 86, 87 moving onward. And it's no surprise that around that time, of course, there was other factors that involved, the lack of success. But at that time, that was kind of the downfall for Transformers. They started to have to tool their own stuff. They started to have to put more plastic and engineering into it. They have to do it themselves. They have to plan ahead. And everything started to kind of go downward. Now, like I said, other stuff was happening in 87. There were certain Heroes in a Half Shell that were on the rise. A lot of stuff was changing. So it was one of many things that led to kind of that downward spiral for Transformers during the late 80s, and then everything coming back, later on in the 90s. But I mean, even when they went into G2, they remembered what happened. When they started Generation 2 in 93, they remembered how, ooh, man, we got to really be careful with this tooling and stuff because it's a big investment. And people don't realize that initial wave of Generation 2, 70% of that line was old molds, repaints, retools. 70%. So they were playing it safe with G2. And sadly, G2 didn't work out as they had hoped. It did well initially, but I mean, look, they even repackaged the original show. Like they were just playing it on the budget. And then when they went into Beast Wars, that's a whole different animal. That's Kenner. That's a different, that was a sister company at the time with Hasbro. But even Kenner, with all the success that Beast Wars had, all the big money they were making, the millions of product they were sold, #1 best-selling boys toy of 1998, beating out the N64 and video games and everything, that were holding a stranglehold on the #1 boy toy sales with Toys R Us and everything like that, especially in the 90s with the advent of the Nintendo. But even with all that success that Beast Wars had, it still repainted everything. I mean, I can't even think of a Beast Wars mold outside of maybe something obscure that didn't see some kind of second run in something else. I mean, they really made sure that everything got covered. Every mold got, maybe a McDonald's toy, but that doesn't count. That's a different company. That's HMS and stuff. But, it's just, it's nuts. It's nuts. Like, even during Beast Wars. And going into afterwards the later stuff, looking at RID, all these repaints and repacks and Unicron trilogy and going onward, that just became the name of the game. You're going to put your time and energy into tooling something, you got to constantly put it out there to make your money back. But here's the thing, Here's the thing. 2 words when it comes to studio series and those Michael Bay molds, which is what you pretty much mentioned. And of course, movie stuff specifically, not really the G1 flavored stuff. 2 words: Chinese market. The movie toys sell hand over fist in China. It is absolutely insane, the numbers that they pull in China with studio series movie toys. So much so that there has been exclusives made exclusively for the Chinese market because they're so crazy. The studio series Taobao exclusive camo blackout leader class comes to mind, and then you have all that, year of the insert Chinese Zodiac here, year of the Dragon Ultimate movie Optimus Prime Dark of the Moon. I'm just going off the top of my head here, So it's like they really, 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 really love their movie stuff. And when you think about it like this, right? If only 0.5% of China's population bought Transformer products, and we're talking billions of people, if 0.5% of China bought Transformer products, that's 7.5 million people. That's more population than the state of Arizona, Tennessee, Indiana, Missouri, Wisconsin, Colorado. What's another small state? Minnesota, Southern California, not Southern California, Southern Carolina, just to give you perspective. And 7.5 million. That's the entire population of everywhere in Canada minus Quebec and Ontario. So just think about that, man. The United States of America has a population of 330 million people at best. You're talking, 1.5 billion. And if only 0.5% of that cared about Transformers, man, those numbers move. And they love the movieverse. They absolutely love it. They love it. It was because of the numbers of that very first Michael Bay movie. Made $37 million just in China alone, that it made Hasbro and Hollywood in general go, oh, wait a minute. This is an important market we need to focus on. And then let's not even talk about like how China was involved with Age of Extinction. They loved those movies so much, they were 100% involved with Age of Extinction. There is scenes in that movie that don't even make sense to us as a Western audience member because they were specifically made with specific actors for a specific joke, for a specific audience, just for China. Drinking specific, goods in the background that are made for the Chinese market. They did a reality show in China to find actors that were going to be part of Age of Extinction. Like they were all crazy about the movie stuff. They still are. They still are. But you got to understand that like that's how those studio series stuff don't really need to do repaints because they sell so well over there that there's almost not even a need to, because they just put out a mold and it just sells like millions of units. I'm pretty sure like a single Wreckers member, like you think about like how much could be sold in America and Canada, but it's crazy. And it's nuts too, because we were supposed to have a Chinese exclusive Transformers series that was like a spin-off of Cyberverse, Transformers Neza. And that was supposed to happen in like, I think they announced in December of 2019. Of course, the following year, what happened, and the big V just came around and that didn't happen. That was supposed to be like a 52 episode series and everything. So China is really invested on this brand, and specifically the movie stuff. Now, obviously today, When you think about, Studio Series is starting to slow down. They're running out of stuff that they could do. So they've talked about how they're probably going to be revisiting some of those molds and doing certain color schemes and repaints and characters and everything like that. It's bound to happen. But they're going to milk that cow until it runs out of milk. They're going to milk it as crazy. But they don't have to right now because, man, is it doing good. Where when you talk about something like the Unicron trilogy, where Transformers wasn't exactly in 100% the best place at the time, hey, man, you put that hotshot mold out, you got to make sure you get the most you can out of it. And if you have to do 3 repaints to really make that tooling back, hey, good for you. But in a post-2007 era, with China just absolutely loving the movie stuff, it's crazy. Now, you could argue, well, with Proto-Man, what about all the initial movie stuff? 2007 movie toys, Revenge of the Fallen toys, why did that have a ton of repaints? China wasn't on board like it is today now. It's a completely different animal today than what it was, back in 2007, 2009, and 2010. And I think the decline started a little bit with 2011. But man, you have just the numbers. The fact that because I constantly look at the Chinese message boards because that's where a lot of the news breaks. That's where a lot of stuff pops up. And the amount of times it's always just about Studio Series. Movie. It's like G1 and Beast Wars never even existed. And Unicron Trilogy, forget about it. They don't even care. It's all movie. And I think it has a lot to do with that because the amount of units that are moved of, let's say the Wreckers you mentioned, or something like, Movie Brawl, that's a leader class toy, 2 per case, and millions of units were moved over there. It's a population game. It's a whole other discussion in a lot of ways because China in a lot of ways moves a lot of just goods just in general, and a lot of different companies are paying attention to that. Leads to a whole other discussion too of how, if you should cater to that market and what about your original market. That's a whole other discussion, but that's really what's going on at the end of the day. And I mean, Studio Series in a lot of ways is, when you think about it, it's one of the few Transformer lines that are still kicking around. Every other Transformer line we've had, with the exception of probably Masterpiece, is the only other one I could think of, has changed a name, changed a title, made some kind of sub-imprint. Look, it was Classics, then it was Universe, then it was Generations, then it was, War for Cybertron, yada, yada. Now it's Legacy. But Studio Series has been rocking it and nonstop rocking it for quite a few years now with nonstop, where every other line has had to change their name with retailers and stuff because Studio Series could just coast just on those Chinese numbers alone. It's that crazy. So I hope that kind of gives you a bit of a better idea, but it's nuts, the numbers. It's absolutely nuts. And when you see the activity on that side of the globe when it comes to that brand that part of the brand, it gives you a real better idea. I mean, just look at China's Transformer amusement park and Swerve's Bar and all that crazy stuff. It is nuts over there. It really is. Anyways, I hope that you kind of learned something from that Mirage 101. I hope it kind of gives you a better idea. I'm pretty sure we're going to see repaints at some point of a lot of those. Movie Brawl into Desert Brawl and a lot of those. But I think they're going to wait until they really need to do that, and they really don't have to right now. Those are slots, and those are molds, and those are spots in wave assortments that don't need to be put there right now. You could do a leader class Brawl in his desert camo, but then you're taking away a leader class slot from something they could be doing that could be turning way more money. So when it gets quiet, I'm pretty sure we're going to probably get to those points, but they're going to put some distance from that first before they have to resort to things like that. Anyways, guys, let me know what you think. I mean, it's just my take, but let me know your take. And again, if you want to be like Mirage 101 and be a patron, help support the podcast, let us know we're doing a decent job. Again, patreon.com/Protoman, or the pinned comment or the description below. And like I always say, rock out with the robots in the skies. Tomorrow is Saturday, so we have a Saturday night live stream, so we'll see you then.